Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and welcome to another one of my real estate videos. Today I'm going to be talking about renting versus buying a house. There's a lot of sentiment out there about how buying a house is stupid, it's not an asset, it's not an investment, and people should rent. I completely disagree with those ideas. I think buying is almost always better. I'm going to tell you why in this video. I'm going to tell you what those other people are missing and what they're leaving out when buying a house, and give you a lot of great information. So I'm an investor myself. I flipped 26 houses last year. I own 20 rentals. Investing in real estate is amazing. It can be awesome. I've made a lot of money in it. I've also made a lot of money in my own personal houses that I lived in. And there's a lot of huge advantages to living in a personal house. So I'm going to tell you all about that. Before I get started, you can find more information on me, on my investing at investformore.com. That's F-O-U-R, the number 4 spelled out. Investformore.com. Have a weekly podcast, all kinds of articles on flipping, rentals, being an agent, and lots of great resources for anybody interested in real estate. Even if you don't want to be an investor, even if you just want to buy a house yourself, I have great information about that as well. I also have a book I wrote about how to buy a house, which you can find on Amazon. Just search for Mark Ferguson. It tells you all about the ins and outs of buying a house, what to watch out for, how to make it a really good investment for you. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit about what other people say, why they say you shouldn't buy a house. A lot of the ideas out there are that when you buy a house, you're simply hoping it goes up in value, and that's how you make your money. And that is a really false statement. People say, well, the stock market has averaged 9% or whatever it is every year, and real estate only goes up 3 to 5% every year. So that right there proves that a house is a worse investment than the stock market. But they're forgetting many, many things about buying a house. For one thing, when you buy a house, you don't pay all cash for it. Some people might, but most people get a loan. So if you invest in the stock market, you're almost always putting all of your money into the stock market. If you buy $100,000 worth of stock, you're spending $100,000 to buy that stock. If you buy a $100,000 house, most people are going to get a loan. They're going to put between 3 and 20% down when they buy that house. So while you have $100,000 invested in the stock market to earn that 9% return, which would be $9,000 a year. Well, if your house only makes 5% a year and you're only making $5,000 a year on it, well, you only put $5,000 or $10,000 into that investment. You're making a much higher return on investment with the house because you put so much less money into that investment. It's not at all fair to compare just the straight returns to the stock market versus the straight returns on the housing market. Now, there's a lot of other things to consider when you buy a house as well. First off is you have to have a place to live. Sure, that'd be great if you could invest all your money in the stock market and just live free somewhere, maybe with your parents. I don't think many people want to do that. Not everybody has parents who will let them live with them. Not everybody has parents at all. So it's not always an option. A lot of people want their own house. So you have to pay rent if you don't buy a house. In many parts of the country, rent is more expensive than buying. Now, some people argue you're not calculating all the expenses when you buy a house. And that's fair. You do have more expenses when you buy a house. You'll have to pay property taxes. You'll have to pay homeowners insurance. You might have to make some maintenance and repairs while you own the house. However, rents are usually so much more that higher rent makes up for all those expenses you're paying for in your house. Even after paying those expenses, you usually save money buying as opposed to renting. For example, let's say a $100,000 house. Now, not everybody can buy a $100,000 house. You may have to pay more, but just to make the math easier, you put $5,000 down on a 30-year mortgage. Your mortgage payment is probably going to be somewhere between $600 and $900 a month based on what your taxes and insurance are in your area. So that includes taxes and insurance. Rent on that same house is probably going to be at least $900, maybe a little less in some areas. In other areas, it might be as much as $1,200. Usually, where the taxes are higher, the rents are higher, just because people who rent houses and own investment properties want to make money on them. They don't want to just do it for the fun of it. they'll have higher rents where there's higher property taxes. So in most cases, it is cheaper to buy than to rent. And when you're making those improvements, when you have to spend money in the house, when you have to paint it, when you have to make repairs, oftentimes you're improving the house, which means you're adding value to it. So it's not just money you're throwing away and will never see again. You know, if you add a bathroom, if you have to repaint the house, if you have to put in flooring, and you bought the house when it wasn't in great shape, oftentimes you're adding value. You're going to get that money back, or at least part of that money back, so it's not just a complete waste. That's a huge misconception that all that money just disappears and you never see it again. Another huge thing to consider when buying a house is the tax advantages of buying. Now the tax code changed, so it is less advantageous to buy a house for just the interest rate deduction. So when you buy a house, depending on how you file your taxes, if you do deductions and deduct expenses from your taxes and you own a house, your interest is deductible up to a certain point. Now most people will stop doing deductions, so they'll just take the standard deduction because the tax code changed in 2018. However, for people who do deductions, that's still a great advantage. You get to deduct the interest you pay on your loan. As a renter, you don't get to deduct any of your rent from your taxes. You just don't get to, so that's a huge advantage for buyers if they're doing deductions. But that's not the biggest tax break. The biggest tax break, which a lot of people won't tell you about, is if you live in your house for 2 out of 5 years, you end up selling the house for a profit, the profit you make is basically tax-free. Now there's some restrictions, a few things that can change that. If you rent out the house, if you use it for a business, things like that, you may have to pay taxes on some of that money. But if you live in a house for 2 years, you don't rent it out, you don't use it for a business, you make $100,000 on that house, that is tax-free money in almost every case. Now there's limits up to $250,000 for an individual or $500,000 for a couple. That's a lot of money tax-free. There is basically no other investment, no other situation where you can make tax-free money and the government is okay with it. You can do tax deferred, you can invest in a retirement account, you can do a 1031 exchange with certain investments. There's ways to defer tax, but there's almost no other way to make tax-free money. And that's one of the absolute biggest advantages of owning a personal house. Now, to really, really take advantage of owning a personal house, you want to get a good deal on a house, right? You don't want to just depend on appreciation, hoping it goes up 3%, 5%, 10% a year, which is great. That's awesome. But you can make money when you first buy it. Another huge advantage of real estate that I use when I flip houses, when I buy rentals, you can buy a house for less than it's worth. It's almost impossible to do that with stocks. Market value with stocks is pretty much stuck. You know what price you pay for a certain stock. It can go up and down. Maybe it's undervalued. You think everyone else isn't valuing it right, but everyone pretty much agrees what the value is. On a house, you can buy that $100,000 house for $80,000, for $70,000, for $60,000. No, it's not easy. You can't just go out there and do it every day without any experience or knowing what you're doing. It takes work. But we're talking about tax-free money, and it might be worth the work to get a great deal on a house. How do you get a great deal on a house? You can buy foreclosures, you can buy short sales, you can buy estate sales, you can buy houses that aren't for sale through different marketing techniques. You can buy houses that need work. You can buy a house for $60,000, put $10,000 of work into it, it might be worth $90,000, $100,000, $120,000 or more, depending on how good you are at what you're buying. So there is an absolute massive advantage to buying a house if you can take the time to get a great deal on it. You can basically triple, quadruple the money you have into it with your low down payment loan by buying a good deal, maybe doing a few repairs, living in it for 2 years and selling it, and tripling or quadrupling your money. You can do even better in some cases. And now, not always, you could lose money too, that's possible. But it's tax-free. The stock market money isn't tax-free. Even in a retirement account, you're either going to pay taxes when you invest it or when you take it out, depending on how you're set up. Huge advantage for buying a house. Now, there's a study that came out last year, a year or two ago, from a university, pure accredited study, really good study, sort of, that said renting is better than buying. and I read through this study. It took me a long time to find the actual study, the information, how they put together. And there are some crazy things they did in this study. So what their conclusion is if someone is going to try to decide between renting and buying, they're better off renting in most cases if they reinvest every single penny they're going to use to buy a house into the stock market, some other investment, and just rent. However, they also concluded most people are better off buying because almost no one will actually invest all of that money into the stock market. They'll just spend it. Now, even if you are one of those people who are disciplined enough to invest all of your money into the stock market, I still don't think you're better off renting because this study made some big mistakes. Number one, they forgot about the tax-free profit rule. They said you would pay taxes on the profit when you sold your house. They assumed you'd live in your house for like 7 or 8 years, then sell it. They said you'd pay taxes on that money. Totally wrong. Huge bonus. That's, a lot of money you would save right there in taxes that the study was just wrong about. Not even close to the case. The other thing the study did that was, I think, a huge mistake is they assumed every single person who buys a house to live in would put 20% down. So they're saying, if you buy this $100,000 house, you put $20,000 down, 20%, to buy the house. And if you rented, you would take that $20,000 you had and invest it straight into the stock market. That's one reason why they're able to get much better returns renting, because they had this huge lump sum of money they're investing in the stock market, which was compounding interest. Now, the fact is, more than half of people who buy a personal residence put less than 10% down. It's not hard to put 5% down, 3% down with today's loan options. FHA, VA, if you're a veteran, you can put 0 down. USDA, if you live in a rural area. Even conventional loans can do 5% or 3% down. Tons of options for owner-occupants. So you don't have to put that full 20% down. If you're only putting 5% down, that throws the study completely out of whack as well, because now you're only investing $5,000 in the stock market instead of $20,000 on this $100,000 purchase. You're not making as much money in your investment. It ends up being better off buying in that case too. And the third huge thing this study completely ignored and assumed was not possible was getting a great deal on a house. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible to buy a house for less than it's worth. Happens all the time. I do it all the time. You can buy houses from the multiple listing service. They're listed by agents that are good deals. You have to be patient. You might not be able to buy your dream house right away doing this strategy. You might have to make a few sacrifices, live in a house that needs a little bit of work. But it's still much better than renting to buy a house. In almost all cases, if you can get a good deal, if you're going to live there for a couple of years, it's better to buy than rent. You'll save money over rent every month. You'll get to deduct that interest if you're using deductions on your taxes. You'll have tax-free profit when you're done. You have less money invested into the house than, say, if you're just investing a bunch of money in the stock market. And, we're forgetting about one of the biggest advantages of owning a house, your own personal enjoyment, your own personal satisfaction of buying a house. It's yours. You can paint it. You can live there forever if you want to. When you're renting a house, you may have a 1-year lease, maybe a 2-year lease. After that year, they can kick you out. If they want to sell the house, you're gone. You have to find somewhere else to live. You've got to move. If they want to raise the rents, boom, they can raise the rents on you as soon as that lease is up. You may have to keep moving over and over again because the landlord wants to raise the rent, sell the house, whatever it is. You're stuck house hopping. You never have something of your own. When you own a house, that's yours. No one can kick you out as long as you're making payments. And your payments stay the same for those 30 years, 15 years, whatever type of loan you get. The landlord can't come raise your mortgage payment. It stays the same. Now, unless you're getting an adjustable rate mortgage, but you don't have to do that. You can get a fixed loan. Payment will stay the same. Might go up slightly because taxes go up or insurance goes up. But 30 years down the road, you're going to be making that same $600 or so payment as opposed to the renter who's going to be paying like $2,000 in rent in 30 years or whatever it is, instead of paying the $900 when they first started renting. So there's just so many advantages of owning over renting. One other thing is that your rent money, we're just looking straight at the mortgage payment versus the rent before, but you're paying down your loan with every single payment too. So you're also paying off your loan, building more equity, making more money on that side of it as well. So to me, a lot of these guys who are saying it's better off to rent, you're throwing your money away, you're not investing in an asset, you're investing in liability, they're wrong. They're forgetting buying below market value, which is a huge advantage. Almost none of them mention that. They're forgetting the tax-free break you get when you sell it for a profit. Almost none of them mention that. And they're just basing it simply off the returns of the stock market versus returns of the housing market, which is completely false because you can put so much less money down when buying a house. So what is the downfall of buying a house? What happens if you can't make your payments? You lose the house for foreclosure. Are you losing your entire investment? Are you just totally screwed? You're actually not. It's actually not the worst thing in the world if you know how the system works. Now, if you invest $100,000 in the stock market, you could lose that money too. You probably won't lose all of it, but you could definitely lose a chunk of it. So people say, if you're investing just $5,000 in your house and the value goes down, you lost your entire investment. On the surface, that's true. Your $100,000 house goes down to $90,000 in value. You just lost your investment, assuming you didn't get a really good deal, which we already talked about. But there's something they don't tell you. Let's say you go into foreclosure, you can't make your payments, you're worried about losing your $5,000 investment. How's this all work? Well, they don't just come kick you out of your house as soon as you go into foreclosure. There's state laws that stipulate how the process works, when the bank can foreclose, how they notify you, how long it all takes. As soon as your house or you stop making payments, they don't kick you out. They start the foreclosure process. That can take 3 months in really quick states, really fast. It can take 3 years in foreclosure in states that have long foreclosure processes. New York, Florida, New Jersey, Massachusetts have really long foreclosure processes. You basically get to live in your house for free without paying rent for however long that foreclosure process is. They can't kick you out until the bank takes possession of the home. Doesn't matter, not when you're late on your payments, when they take possession after that foreclosure process is done. So it could be a year that you're living in that house, rent-free, mortgage payment-free, not paying any taxes. The bank is paying all of that. They'll be on the hook for it. I'm not saying this is a good strategy to use, but that's how the system works. So if your mortgage payment was $900 a month, you go a year without paying it, that's over $10,000 you just saved in that year on rent that you would have had to pay. Just got your investment back. Just doubled your investment that you're going to lose. On top of that, when the bank does foreclose, they don't just kick you out either. They either have to evict you, which could be a long process as well. More likely, they'll offer you cash for keys, which means they'll come talk to you, say, hey, if you move out in 30 days, we'll give you $2,000. Just make sure the house is clean, all your stuff is gone. Happens all the time. So you can get another couple $1,000s there after you were living rent-free in the house the whole time. You could also do the short sale route, which means you sell the house as a short sale. The bank agrees to take less than they're owed before you lose it in foreclosure. That could help your credit out a little bit. Of course, that's the downside to losing a house to foreclosure. It will hurt your credit. You won't be able to buy for a while. That sucks. It's not a good thing, but we're talking about worst case scenarios here. With a short sale, the bank might even pay you to do a short sale as well. Give you money to do the short sale. You've been living there for free. It's really not as bad as they make it out to be when your house goes down in value and you can't make your payments. It's not the end of the world. Now, the worst case scenario is probably your house goes down in value, you have to move, you don't want to do a foreclosure, you don't want to do a short sale, which is understandable, people want to protect your credit. Yes, then you might lose your money. But again, the chances of the house going down in value that much are slim. Historically, real estate has always gone up in value. If you take the time to get a really good deal when you buy it, there's a slim chance it's going to go down enough to eat away your equity. It is possible, not saying it's not possible, but the chances are much lower that that's going to happen than prices going up and you making that tax-free profit while you're saving money on rent, while you're paying down your loan, all while you have your own house with a locked-in payment that you can paint, you can add, a bathroom in the basement without asking for permission. You can change the flooring. You can dig holes in the backyard. Do whatever you want as long as the city allows it, because it's your house. You don't have to ask for your landlord's permission. You don't have to worry about being kicked out because they want to sell their rental or raise the rents. It's your house. So overall, I think buying is a tremendous advantage over renting for a number of reasons: for money, for personal enjoyment, for investment. And I think a lot of people say renting is better just to get publicity, to get their name out there, to make a big story, but it's not necessarily true. All right, thank you very much for watching. Like I said, I've got a lot more information on real estate, whether you're an owner-occupant, buying for your own personal enjoyment, or you're an investor. Investformore.com, invest, F-O-U-R-M-O-R-E.com. You can check out my podcast, my books on Amazon. And if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'm happy to answer them. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. And if you want to see my upcoming videos, subscribe. I do a lot of before and after videos on my rentals, my flips, and a lot of other advice videos as well. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. All right. I forgot one of the most important parts of this video I wanted to talk about. I guess that's one of the problems of doing these on the fly. If you're wondering how I do these videos, I don't have a script. I don't really write out what I want to talk about. I kind of think about it a little bit, and I just talk. So the statistics for renting versus buying. So we've been talking about the advantage if you're taking the time to get a good deal, really analyze the situation, what good investors would do. But what about everyday normal people who end up buying a house hoping it goes up in value? Is it still a good idea for them? Yes, overwhelmingly, yes, it is still good for them. The statistics show that homeowners have 45 times the net worth of renters. Now, there's some other things that go into that. Most homeowners are probably better off than renters, have a little more savings, investments. But in general, it is overwhelmingly shown that homeowners are better off than renters because they're forced to save. In that first study we were talking about, it said most people are better off buying because they will not invest their money they save, they'll just spend it. But if you're buying a house, you're forced to save because part of your payment is paying down your equity every month. You're putting a down payment in. That is part of your equity. The statistics show that middle-aged people in the United States, something like 70 to 80% of their net worth is in their house. And that keeps going up as you get older. Almost all of their net worth of most people in the United States is in their house that they own. If they rent, they don't have that net worth. That's why there's such a huge disparity between homeowners and renters. More statistics that you won't hear from people who say renting is buying. But the numbers don't lie. I'm a numbers guy. I like to look at statistics. Statistics say buying is better than renting. Okay, I'm done. Now you can go on with your day.